a bit of historical discussion about the early days of SIP Express router than Kamailio. Let me first introduce everyone, and then I will show just a few photos. I'm not sure if Jiri prepared anything else. But yeah, so I'll start actually with Dorgham because he was the head of the department. Here, the second one, so to say, the boss of the others, more or less, except maybe he was a student eventually. But Dorgham was in charge of, funding the research at that time or finding the projects to have the money to pay us and work in this real-time communication field. He will get the microphone to introduce himself as well. I just say a few words. Then we have Jiri next to him that was more into technical at that time and kind of coordinating the team at technical level, if I remember correctly. Then we have Andrei, which kind of did the heavy coding in the first days, and then Jan also part of the team coding quite a lot. And Dragos, the junior, we have it here because he's the one that has the IMS extensions. Yes. IMS extension, and if they are not working, you blame him, not me. I just wanted to show his face so you know who is it. But yeah, so I also was quite young at that time. The last joining the team, okay, besides Dragos. So yeah, just to show a few photos from that age. So the proof that, yeah, this year, and we have Andrei, which is this one here, the commits we have in the Git history. So probably it's one of the, the fastest first line of code to the first working release, right? So it is like less than 24 hours in the September. And I was not there to attest it was actually working release, but whatsoever. A few days ago, this is from this open hub or whatsoever. So I thought it's more like an independent rather than running myself some scripts, so everyone can search on the web. It's doing like monthly or aggregation. So over all these years, practically are like 564 contributors with over 40,000 commits and millions of 1,173,000 like codes offline, effort evaluation and so on. But as you can see, it's rather stable commits and contributors, which I'm really happy to have after so many years. I have to make a small correction in the way that this is 25 years of development. The project was like 1 year later made open source, right, if I remember. It was developed internally to have something working than more than this first release. Something like that. We get that. So yeah, this is me at Cebit. This is Cebit like March 2002. I joined in January, if I remember, a few months after the first commits. Then I have the next. We had the meeting because, the history, we had kind of a split of the project. And then in 2008, we met in Karlsruhe with Henning, arranged that. So you can see some younger faces here. Ramona, that's the entire group. Should be also this one, maybe it's more accurate. You can see Andrei was there, Dragos was there. Karsten Bock is not here, but was there Stefan Swer. You see also Janak, it's there. Dan was in Karlsruhe. You are everywhere, all the time.
No beard.
Henning, no beard on the other side. And some other people from community at that time. Then what still I have here? The dinner at the same event, more or less. Bogdan Pinta, maybe some people remember him. Stefan Swer at the dinner, again, Karsten Bock, Andrei, Dragos. What else I found here? These are the Linux tags. So Raphael is also here somewhere in. Raphael? It's in the middle, but was supposed to be around here. Maybe he's still having a coffee. Then Karsten Bock, Henning, and Timo. I think it was 1 and 1 at a time. With Ramona, the Linux tag. This is 2010. This is 1 year later. And Andreas Gröning was also there. Yeah, no bird, but looks. What else I found here? More recent, this, I think it's a Kamailio war, but I wanted actually to give credits to other community members like Ole Johansson, then Peter Dunkley that added WebRTC and a lot of presence. Then Klaus Darillion was quite active in the past, and I was looking for a photo because he was the one actually proposing the Kamailio name. And this is like 10 years ago, 15 years, Kamailio, we had the panel again with Dorgham and Jiri and Andrei. So just to see some pictures from time ago. And that's it. From my side, I wanted to just show some memories. But otherwise, let me start with some discussion, and again, maybe with Dorgham. How was it at that time? Did you expect to go so long, so far, and what you expected? Because you've been in the research and you know some projects kind of succeed more than the others.
Not really.
You have.
So Fraunhofer is not exactly famous for building research projects that last more than the duration of the project. And that's simply because the way research world is structured. You get money for a certain topic, and you try to do your PhD, your papers, and then you move to the next one. We've tried to build something that makes fun. Well, basically, Andrei refused to work on the research projects, so we had to have something for him that excites him, which is basically how many thousand TCP connections can I do on BlackBerry or anything small? Jiri was never the type of person who works just for the work, but he wanted to have a goal. He actually left a well-paid US job to come back to actually work on the project. Jan, as our, I would say, Czech slave, sort of like that word, but that's the way he described himself.
No, it's green.
No, he was also left a well-paid job to actually join the team and work on something that is fun. And that was actually our luck as a group at Fraunhofer to have such a great team. Everybody with his talents and dedication to work on something that we believed is really nice. Why did we believe it's nice? Because at some point in time we had a lot of money to buy Cisco equipment. Wow. And soon after we deployed it, we discovered, well, that really is crap. Well, that's 25 years ago now, so I'm not sure how they work now. I'm sure they have better equipment. So I don't want to talk long, but I think if you look at the group, one of the first comments we received was, Sir is a great example of German engineering. Now, at times in which nations and people seem to compete who is the most national, who is the most racist, I think the combination of Czech, Romanian, Palestinian, French, we had a Hungary guy, we had, well, also had Germans. At a German institution shows that research and development will not work with closed borders, with closed minds, but we have to work on something that we like, with people we like, regardless of where they come from or how they speak.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Jiri, you take over, and you're kind of the guy, if I remember, because I'm no longer young, like you're scanning the world, trying to promote the project and at many conferences. And what did you find by going around, and how you try to shape SIP Express router based on your experience? You already said with Cisco, but yeah, I remember some photo you sent recently, like some are having like huge, like servers to run some telephony engine. And how is your experience, and what motivated you to believe in this, let's say, project?
Maybe we confirmed what Konrad Adenauer has said. You have to piss off someone to be taken seriously, first of all. And Dorgham has been very helpful in that. I remember we were first showing up in Atlanta Bonn, Voice over Net. It was a big party, big trade show, and also Bake Off. And we were demonstrating our software, and suddenly some MBA type of guy came in and said, "You're gonna tell me why you're selling this crap when we have already Vovida?" I don't know, who remembers Vovida? Too long ago, but it was the first open source project for SIP. And for that you had like a SIP redirect server, which we were building for 2 weeks, and the register, which took like 3 days of building, and so on and so forth, totally decomposed and just way too big, shooting for too big dimension. So Dorgham, honestly, when we were asked by the guy, why are you doing this? What does it make better than Vovida? Dorgham said laconically, "It works." And the guy was Alan Tnitovsky, and he was founder of the Vovida, which was later acquired by Cisco. And probably for the human talent, because they had a lot of good guys there, but his software was a little bit over-engineered. So that was one of the points how we started making ourselves well-known. But I would like to expand one more story. Dorgham has already said it. But it was like the 2000-something when I really thought that this Fraunhofer research, I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to see running code, and running means not it compiles, but it pushes the bits back somewhere in production network. So I came to a company, and I thought, okay, screw the research stuff, let's go for some real thing, which was a prestigious American company, startup filled up with VC money. They had all the best people out there, and of course they hired me to got a lavish salary, everything. And it was really exciting, and the people were magnificent there. Just when I look at the Java software, I was beginning to doubt my own decision to go there. And it was really that I was looking back in Andrei's CR code, that I just gave it up. Didn't say to my wife anything about change financial conditions. Said we are returning to Berlin, and that was it. And I came for Andrei's code. So I think really Andrei's deserves a big credit. And that was the things which formed us in the beginning. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Let's go, Jan, maybe. Yes, this next. Because then you then continue at some point, or return back to the research. How was your experience from the first years in research and building SIP Express router, then eventually helping, or how is the second part of your research that was more applied? How you feel it was an evolution in this?
So after many years working on SIP, I decided it was time for a change. So I went back to academia. I moved to the US and started working in Henning Schultrini's lab at Columbia University. So my original plan was to not do SIP anymore.
Okay, so.
But after getting there and talking to people, I realized that many of the research projects that the lab was running at that time actually had a SIP component. So when I would talk to someone, they would say, "Oh, so you're one of the SIP Express router guys. I have a problem for you. Maybe you can help me fix it." So for me, it was a great way to actually be able to talk to people and to make connections. So for me, SIR and what then became Kamailio really did open a lot of doors. I met a lot of people, some consulting companies from Wall Street that were running SIP Express router in the basement, powering the phones on the Wall Street trading floor. At that time, there was this project called Internet 2. Many of the leading US universities did run a version of SIR for their internal voice communication system. So it's not an exaggeration if I say that the second half of my career, I owe it to SIR and Kamailio, and the fact that there are so many of you here sitting in this room 25 years later makes me think that I'm not the only one. So we were able to create something very special in the sense that it's a piece of software that attracts people, attracts smart people, and that for me is probably the biggest achievement and the biggest satisfaction I got from all the years. Okay. Hacking on modules, writing documentation, responding to emails on the mailing list, and doing all the thankless work that needed to be done.
You want to add something, Radu?
Yeah, so I was kind of the student a little bit, well, the student in this group at least. I came relatively late to the party, right? SIP Express router was 2004 I joined, so it was already kind of working, it was solid, and I had this thing where, you know, I came from H3 to free, and that was the closest thing that you could have to IP, actually. Because the other thing that we had, if you don't remember, was I worked in this company, RDS in Romania, Digi, I think there are some colleagues here, I don't know where you are. Hey, and we had these racks from Alcatel. Yeah. And the way that I made them a little bit work over IP was RS-232 to IP, to TCP adapters, you know, so yeah, that was the level. And automation meant OCR scanning, manuals, and then trying to generate some you know, something to deal with that so you wouldn't manually manage all of that. So, you know, when I joined Focus, and it was all about SIP, and it was so modern, you know, and yes, it was way simpler back then. But the mind-blowing thing was that Dorgham said, you know, hey, implement this IMS thing. And it was, what do you mean? This is a whole mobile core network. Like, yeah, but, you know, there are armies of engineers that build these racks. What do you mean? It does not compute. You know, so no, just see what's the best that you can do. What can you make out of this? And I think that that's the nice thing about for Focus. You know that we got a time, we got the opportunity to try crazy things and to see what works. And the other thing about the performance, how the IMS, the open source IMS core came to be, was actually that there was a paper published somewhere, and people were scared to actually put the real names, and it was sort of, this is what one C proxy uses of CPU, this is what another, this is another, and this is another one. And Intel came to us and said, we found out that the smaller one is SIP Express router, and we think that's the future. So how about you make, you know, how about we invest into this, into IMS and so on. Yeah, and with research, I think, you know, it's just a wonderful environment. All of you that work in the industry know that it's very hard to actually get budget to work on new ideas, new things. And at Focus, it was actually kind of the norm a little bit. Sort of, what do you think it works? Okay, it's a crazy target. Let's see if you can do it, you know.
Okay, so now to Andrei, because I know he likes to talk about sales and business. So I have a question for him because, again, he's like the main architect of the first releases, and still probably we use or we rely on his design decision at that time. And he's still involved a lot in development, I know. So my question would be, if you'd start from scratch now, you'd change anything on this architecture, like not multi-process, but maybe multi-threading, or I don't know, other programming language or so?
So, a hard question. What I would do, I think I would try to make it configurable, to make it run both multi-threaded and multi-process and have some, a little bit more abstract, so that you could combine both. I mean, the multi-process architecture has some advantage, especially if you have, right now I like memory separation. At the time was for performance, because at the time threads were not so fast. Context switches between threads were slower. But now it has still has the advantage of isolating memory. So if you have some crash, some memory, it's isolated to one process and way easier to debug. So I guess I would try to combine both. I mean, it has some limitations, and it would be nice to be able to have thread for some other stuff.
So we are kind of leading there. From last year, we had multi-threading UDP, now multi-threading TLS, and so on. So, yeah, looks like we follow his kind of direction, let's say it. Okay, so I don't know, we don't have much time. Maybe someone wants to ask a question that, again, Andrei will be on the technical side. If you found something strange in the code, probably it's his fault or Jan's fault also. And Jiri has also some strange comments.
Andrei will be keen to tell you everything about the TM module.
Yeah, these things. But yeah, they are running. Sometimes it's like they said, if it's running, don't touch it, and you think about how at that moment the decision was made. But we are 25 years, so that proves it was not really a bad decision. Maybe we kind of lost why, or we are not part of that coding. So I have Ihor.
What was the reason of writing own memory manager?
Speed. It's way, at least at the time, but I think now too, it's way faster and adapted to the workload of Kamailio, of CER. So, yeah, that's the main reason, speed.
And I would say I really love that, actually. We based a different project, but with the same memory allocations. And we said, you know, we're going to run with debugging until we get to production. We never turn debugging off because you have while grind built in. And it's so far so good that, it just makes sense.
Okay, back to Dorgham, because it's about this, what could be done different. So Dorgham, from your leadership and maybe also Jiri, would you have been a little bit more strict on, let's say, be more, how to say, commercial friendly rather than very techy results? Because many complain about this config file being rather strange and so on. With your experience now, you will kind of force Andrei, okay, let's go for, I don't know, prefix-based routing or something else, or Node.js. How do you think now? Is more valuable, fast, but very technical, or a bit more, I don't know, user interface oriented? Not user, but admin, more admin friendly.
Well, Fraunhofer is not famous for its great sales team. So we were actually the first group that went open source. I mean, they usually had some products which you try to sell through startups, and we looked at this and said, no, we don't want to be that. Like, company after 5 years was still struggling, so we said, either it goes well or we don't leave it. So with no sales budget, no experience in operations, and actually no voice over IP market then, because there was no voice over IP, we decided that whatever pleases a guy like Andrei will probably please a lot of other geeks who are doing voice over IP then. And apparently we were right. So no, I don't think we would have spent more time on GUI and that then, because we were getting, the first people who were contacting us and wanting to solve something, they always had some weird issues. It's not something that you could solve with a prefixed GUI, and his configuration language, how ever complicated and strange it is was probably the right answer to actually solve all the problems of all of our different weird scenarios that we had to solve them.
Okay, Jiri, you want? Oh, Jan wanted to add something.
Just wanted to add very quickly to this that early on we used to go to these events called SIP bake-offs, like interoperability testing, and the configuration language and its flexibility was a killer feature of SIP Express Router.
Yeah,
Because
for
no
tech
other
guys, but
no other software could actually match that, and they were running these complicated tests with spirals and loops and everything. And for some of the other companies to be able to configure such scenarios meant recompiling everything. So today you might want to consider something like Node.js or like a more established language for the configuration file, but that didn't exist at that time, right? So hindsight is always 2020. But having this kind of programmability early on was actually a really great feature.
Yeah, we have actually like Lua, Python, not Node.js. We have JavaScript, but with a duct tape interpreter. So
We used to have TickleTK then, and that was not really flexible.
yeah, and I think Perl was really with a lot of memory leaks, not for parallel running and recursive running of the same script.
That was Python.
Python?
It's parallel running.
Okay. Okay, so Jiri, so your thoughts on what could have been done different to be more AI friendly, or no? We have AI at the core now with AI.
I think at the time it was actually okay, but I hide myself behind Gemini. I asked yesterday Gemini, tell me the best things about SCR/Kamailio, and it said all the things now. It's super fast, super robust, and so on and so on, and it has a lot of modules. And tell me the ugly things. It's really horrible. Labyrinth of age documentation, 100 something, many modules. Nobody can configure it, and unless you need the 100,000 parallel scores, don't use it. So I don't think it's actually a software failure of the software itself. I think for something which would provide more product experience, you need to wrap it in distribution, have a GUI, have a lot of things around it. But Gemini told that if you take it as is, it requires quite some black belt, and I occur to think that too. I don't want to hide myself behind Gemini. But at that point of time, things were very fluid. In the first years, we were not sure who would be using SIP. We were all excited about possibilities. It would be telcos because they were rich and we desperately needed money. We thought intuitively the first adapters would be ISPs, and it actually turned out to be the case because the ISPs began to challenge telcos, and ISPs, they have always very deep technical experience, and they have this do-it-yourself inclination. So that was actually, at that point of time, it was a very good match. And then there were a lot of cases, forgot now, but there were some tests of SCR on a US submarine. There were tests on Boeing. There was, for the time being, a Boeing connection project, one of the first internets on transatlantic flights. And they were experimenting with voice over IP2. That was then discontinued because the annual budget was 300 million euro because of a complicated satellite handover architecture. And we were always able to align it to some very specific needs of very specific deployments, which would have been thinkable otherwise. So I think for the initial birth hour, it was better than perfect match, and it continued to be so for quite long. Now AI, I think it begins. I return a little bit to what Gemini has said. That it begins to be a little bit cumbersome. A lot of modules, a lot of documentation to digest, a lot of requirement of understanding the SIP protocol. I think maybe it's waiting for some overlay layer that will make things by default a little bit easier.
I'm taking that we, the developers of the project, we are not going to be replaced by AI very soon, based on that report. Okay. To wrap it quickly, but first I want to ask Dragos, because how hard was for you to kind of start working, because you joined a bit later and then you had to do this MS extension on an existing, let's say, complex project. Was easy to get in, like trying to say it for new people in this room eventually, or watching online, if it's hard to get into the code and build on top of it?
It wasn't easy. I mean, you can still probably see it in some of the modules that I did for IMS, because it was at one point, you have one task and you want to get it to completion, but sometimes you don't understand the architecture. And I remember a very interesting talk with Jan that came into my office, and he looked at my code and said, "What are you doing here? Why don't you export all of this to the script and to the routing script and just orchestrate all of this stuff from there?" So, I think what helps a lot, what helped me there then and also probably helps now, is to just have some, maintainers, some developers in the project explain you the philosophy of the modules, because, or the whole structure, because, you have a lot of developers, which is a blessing, but it's also sometimes overwhelming. And I will kindly ask all developers, when you're doing something, when you're adding a feature, you need that itch that needs to be scratched. Please add tests. Please make sure that, if you do something and you find another bug, well, try to fix that. Think about the architecture, think about those things, because this is, how the project will continue. So, for example, for IMS, for what I did back then, I did it for my diploma thesis, but I think Smilecoms, right? They overhauled everything and then they made it kind of usable for more people.
It was a separate project and then integrated into Kamailio. Okay, we don't have much time, so I don't know, the last words from everyone. I don't know, like, is there any future for telephony? Just a random thought.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, he's you. Okay, I put him in the right position.
Yeah. No, but I just want to say one thing. I tried with IMS, and IMS was very slow to get into the market. And we were struggling, with all kind of soft phones and, making our own devices and our own clients and so on. Today, I'm literally buying second-hand phones from eBay, mobile phones. So any iPhone, Samsung, whatever, everything works with SIP and with, with these things. So it's much easier to test now.
Andrei, then what advice you could give to new developers? They should now focus more on this, easy to use, or you still think that performance and so on pays?
What advice I would give is look into AI. Get a subscription, run it locally. It makes life way easier. Well, unfortunately, for the ones who really like to code, but...
Okay. Yeah. Jan, for you, what advice you have for open source, I don't know, community and everything, research eventually? Focus should be on?
I think it's generally, when you're trying to design an application or potential open source software, it's better to make a small number of users really happy rather than making everybody sort of happy. I think that was the original appeal of SIP Express router.
Dorgham, your thoughts for us, for younger people here, about this kind of decision, go with open source and more, flexibility, look better at usability or easiness? Where you think in long term it's the right choice?
Well, I must confess I have mixed feelings when it comes to open source. We made all our success based on open source, but we actually did not make any money with open source. Really. There are lots of big companies using the open source software that we built, and we actually, at least Fraunhofer invested a lot of money into making, and we never received any money back for that. So it's a difficult thing. I mean, if you're looking at it from a commercial point of view, yes, it can work, it can be tough, but in the end, everyone has to decide what is his best sales opportunity. I know that we would not be able to sell a very complicated zip proxy that 25 years ago nobody knew what is being used for as a competitor to Cisco. But then, and so from this point of view, it was for us the right decision.
Okay, maybe for you, with this future of telecom, I understood it's no. So what do you think will be the future of communication then? The bots chatting between them and then making a summary?
Well, actually, I will start with my favorite. I like analytics because we find out what's going on, what's going wrong, and we find out, we know of cases that there were like some guys calling themselves on a 900 premium number 24/7 in 30 parallel calls. And the question is, what is that? And it sounds like money laundering. So there are apparently some good use cases still surviving. Other than that, I have some dilemmas. One of them is we have been doing all the live CERT and SIP, but I actually see that I make 9 of 10 phone calls using WhatsApp and 10 of 10 messages just only WhatsApp. So I think it may be, if one is seeking for a stronger explanation, it may be a extrapolation of the end-to-end principle, which says put more intelligence in the end devices and the rest will be sorted out. So it may be actually something not to be forgotten about. The standard is there, but maybe the end devices are super powerful and they can roll whatever standards we have very easily over. And the last dilemma is, I was just looking at some use case, and it looked like complicated. This was Gemini called labyrinth of modules. So I thought I will try to write my own proxy using AI, and I think I've got a pretty good proxy, which has cost me like 6 or 8 hours of AI time, and it has user location, authentication, registration, processing, media relay, DTMF analysis. DTMF is still living with us. It's incredible. And these 6 hours almost seem easier to me than to start downloading, relearning all Kamailio modules and putting them together. So that's a dilemma for me. Like, what would be actually easier for me to do? Just come and shout at AI and do it for me and like that with a shopping list, or just go and start reading the how-tos.
Okay, so yeah, AI seems to be a threat to some businesses then, including developers apparently, so, and consultants. We don't have more time, but the guys will be around. We are already past the time, but we planning to finish earlier so we can go over the 6 p.m. They will be around, so if you want to learn more about the initial, I don't know, design decision, or I don't know, stories from that time, or what they are doing now. They are also doing amazing things with like Frafos and NetPath networks, something like that. Jan is back in research for PhD. But yeah, meet with the guys during the break, the evening event, if they can stay all here. And then big thanks for coming here and, digging into some history.
Thank you for inviting us, and thank you all for having us here.